What does music mean to you?
Ah, that is a very difficult question to answer
Okay, yeah, good.
because music is art, and art is very difficult to quantify.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of joke around and say that music is life. My father has a song for every life instance possible. Like if he meets someone, I'll never forget it. I dated a guy once upon a time that had a slightly unusual name. And I introduced him and he started singing a song with this guy's name in it. And I was like mortified because I was 16 and I was like, oh, but this is the environment in which I was raised.
Okay, okay,
And it's kind of passed on to me. So
okay.
I I can't imagine life without music. It's just there
Yeah,
always.
okay. How do you tune into it? Or
Oh,
how
you
do you
can
tune it out?
definitely. I was going to say that that's more the proper question. Um, the How do I tune it out? Um, I don't know if I can. It's just you have to get in a flow state of some sort where you're all focused in on one thing, and then
Hmm.
but you can do that with music too. And when I go to compose something, you have to kind of put yourself in a certain mindset and just kind of let that process kind of happen when you want it to happen.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? um, but it's just kind of always there. That's the best way to explain it that I have, I guess.
If it's always there, then the question that I would ask is probably not something you can necessarily answer, because the question that I want to ask is, what does music add to life? But if you have never not known music, then how would you know what it adds to life if music is life?
um, I actually can answer that question because the music has gone away at times. Um, I've experienced pretty severe postpartum depression and
Mm.
anxiety.
Hmm.
And in the deepest part of that, the music went away.
Oh, okay.
And I would say that it was incredibly depressing because music adds so much beauty and joy, even to difficult parts of life when you're facing really horrific things. You can find beauty and difficulty in music. It's actually one of the best mediums, in my opinion, to deal with the difficulty
Hmm.
that is in life, I guess you could say. And the louder the music gets, the happier I am.
Oh,
Which is weird. It's weird to think about that way because I sound like a psychotic person. But my husband says, because I'm not self aware enough to observe this about myself. But my husband says when he walks in and I'm either singing or I'm playing music or something's going in the background, today is going to be a good day.
oh, okay.
Like Lauren is happy. You're going to have to edit that out. I am happy. um, so that's just kind of how that's just kind of how things are. So the music has left at times, but that was also accompanied by a lot of darkness, a
Hmm.
lot of, you know,
Hmm.
sadness, I guess.
So you say, this might seem kind of dumb, but I just kind of want to really break it down. You say that it adds beauty to life. How? Does it allow you to manipulate things? Does it make you feel engaged with things? Does it make you feel like you have agency, or you're in a conversation with things? Like, what is it? What does it give you and allow you and add to you?
I think it helps me contextualize things. That's the best way I can. to put the everyday into a context of some sort. Um, I'm going to do something that's really weird and artisty and see if I can help you understand. If you listen to a symphony, not every moment of the symphony is beautiful, right? There's times of tension. There's even times of ugliness quite often, depending on what symphony you're looking at and what kind of music you're listening to. But not every moment is perfect and beautiful. There's tension, there's complexity, and then it kind of resolves, and then it dissolves again into complexity, and then it kind of comes. You have a bit of a flow there where it kind of comes and goes. And if you can kind of think about life and things happening in life, there's going to be times where there's tension and ugliness and difficulty. And you can kind of put that into the context of your life and go, okay, well, right now, at this moment, I'm experiencing dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
But that dissonance hopefully will resolve soon. Does that make sense? I feel like this is not making any sense, but this is kind of how I contextualize things. So when you're experiencing something that's really difficult, right? You're looking in the face of the abyss, as Nietzsche calls it.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at that, you can kind of understand that that's there. You don't have to deny it. And there can be you can kind of look away from it. You can kind of move past it and look and find the beauty and find that.
Mm-hmm. So allow me to propose a metaphor. There's like this channel on one level for people just listening. There's one level of life of things happening, like I guess just happening itself is happening. And as you start as a child, it kind of changes over the course of your life. Like we're talking about, you're managing all this stuff. So what's happening in your life has all these different moving parts, and you have to be engaged in all these different levels to all these different things, from dealing with a child in a certain mood to dealing with a husband who doesn't know if you're going to be happy or not today, and then, just to dealing with bills and so on and so forth. So there's that level of happening that has different layers to it. And then there's an emotional flow, an emotional content to that is probably a response to things that are happening either in the past or in the present. And it's not necessarily conscious, but it's there, and it can be pretty profound. It could be pretty dark or pretty bright, and you don't really know why, but you have this, not a tightrope, but there's this catwalk above you with all these curtains that you can just reach up and kind of pull down and say that there's this even higher level of life that you are accessing through music and kind of weaving everything into a wholer thing. And then when you get lost, you can look up and remember that there is a tapestry kind of above you that you are somehow engaging with, and that's engaging with all these different things, tying it together. But if you're in a time of dissonance and the song you sing is dissonant, how do you know that you're not just amplifying dissonance or amplifying the negative by expressing it?
Because music has a direction.
Oh.
Music always is pointed towards what's called the tonic, right? That's how you know the song is ended.
Like the place where the gen is?
Say that again?
It was a stupid joke. It didn't work. So
I didn't hear what you said. It kind of bleeped in my headphones.
The place where the gen is.
Gin, as in like the genie?
No.
The gin. Oh,
the gen with the
okay.
tonic, I guess the gen with the gin and the tonic. Yeah, okay. I'm going to have that out. Anyhow, so there's this thing called a tonic, and there's going to be numbers. I can tell that we're going to get into numbers now, which I want to hear. But there's like a fifth and a third and a seventh or whatever.
Oh
But
yeah,
before we even get there, there's this place called the Tonic, like the
right,
city on a hill.
right. That's where you start and that's where you end.
Hmm.
So it's also called the key of the song. And you have to end in the key of the song. Otherwise, people are going to go, it's not done yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is not done yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually remarkably a lot like life because you're doing, you're born, and before you're born, you're not here. And then after you die, you're not here. So
Hmm.
there's always that tonic of life is non-existent, I guess you could say. I'm a Christian, so I believe in an afterlife, but
Mm-hmm.
um, in the human experience here on this earth, I guess there's that commonality. But regardless,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or you could look at it as helplessness. You start with helplessness and you end with helplessness, generally speaking, if you live to an old age.
Hmm.
So and people look at that as bad, but it's just life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the tonic of life
Hmm.
is time flowing through,
Yeah.
I guess. So music always has a direction. You know where it's going
Hmm.
somehow,
Okay.
unconsciously.
Okay. So
Even
there
people who don't know music know when a song is done because you could just hear when it's done. It has a direction.
there's this video, this TED talk, I believe, of Bobby McFerrin, and he's playing around with an entire crowd, and he gets them to do the some scale without anybody knowing. He just logically says, "Make this sound, make this sound. Okay, let's make this sound, and this sound. Okay, and then make this sound, this, then, and then he stops, and the whole crowd just knows where it goes. It's somehow
Right.
we already know it, kind of like some sort of Chomsky center of language or music in our brain, which I wonder what the brain science is on that. But there is a natural understanding of that. And you're saying that it has a symmetry to it. And when before the song comes into being and lands on a key, it could be anything, right? But once it lands on a
Correct.
key, then you're like, okay, I have the map, but then there's all the steps that make it a melody or a harmony. I guess harmony comes after melody, but once you once you hear that first note, you don't do you start hearing a note? Do you hear a phrase? Like, in what chunkiness does it come down to you?
Oh, that is, I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know how it happens. Sometimes it's inspired by words I read or
Yeah,
hear.
yeah, yeah. Like, or a funny
And
boyfriend's
then
name.
exactly. So it could be that, or it could be any inspiration. It could be watching leaves blow across my back window
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly there's a tune. And you just kind of have to kind of tease it out,
Hmm.
which is a
Mm-hmm.
difficult and tedious process, and I don't particularly enjoy it. Full
The teasing
disclosure.
of the tune.
Yes,
Hmm.
to fully hear it inside of your head, because it's usually a nascent idea, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to kind of pull it all together and then add all the other elements,
Mm-hmm.
and
Hmm.
then you're adding your tension and your resolves and things of that nature. It's not unlike authoring a book where you start with a character, you kind of know your plot, but then you're following your way through, and sometimes that plot changes and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. So anyone that is engaged in a creative mode is going to kind of know what I'm talking about, where you kind of have to tease that
Mm-hmm.
thing into being. Does that make sense?
With regards to your father, who I hear when you told about him, when you spoke about him and you said that he just has song for everything, I got to a place in my life where I could do that too. And it was just like music was just everywhere. Once I started saying, okay, let's do, I was kind of lost creatively, and I was working with 2 year olds and I wasn't being stimulated intellectually, which might come as a surprise because 2 year olds our 2-year-olds. But I'm like, okay, I need to do something creative, and so I told myself I'm going to try, because you'd watch the kids, and you'd see these songs like memes, right? You see these songs just exist outside of any adult, like the ABCs or something, a simple tune, and it would just be passed down, or these little rhymes just get passed down through kids over generations. And you're like, okay, well, I was like, okay, let's try to make a song like that. Let's try to put the perfect meme into that pool and then have it exist beyond me, right? Just like kind of like cast this meme and then let it live, just so that was my writing prompt. So I had a guitar and I just started doing, okay, very simple tunes, da 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 da. And, you just like noodle or you'd listen. But once you start listening or noodling, you're like, oh, well, there's this there, there's that, there's something to sing about everywhere. But there's also songs that aren't even about anything. They just are just waiting to be sung in this weird way. But within the nursery rhyme context, it was pretty simple. I've always just done very simple songs. What you seem to be describing as a higher or a more mature level of composition, what I would call composition, where you're hearing like maybe do you hear like strings or oboes, or like to what like what is the unit of the song for you?
It depends on the song.
Okay.
Often I'm writing music for a purpose.
Okay.
I actually find composing to be quite taxing.
So what is composing
Because
then?
I'm not,
This is after the teasing of the tune. This is before the performance. So there's a middle step for the composition.
yeah. Um, it's the writing the details. So you're in front of a computer or in front of a piano and you're writing the notes out and you're assigning the harmony parts to, you know, mostly I compose for choirs. So or groups along those lines. So most of the time I'm composing for voices. So I have almost no experience for composing for a symphony. I've played in things of that nature, but I've never composed for that. That's not my domain of expertise, I guess you
Okay.
could say. So you could talk to someone who's far more experienced when
Well,
it comes to composing than what I am.
there's plenty of complexity in a choir, because I mean you could probably really quickly list off the parts that you now have to deal with, like the bass and the tenor, soprano. What are they? Alto,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. You pretty much got it. Bass,
Okay.
tenor, alto, and soprano. But depending on the group that you're composing for, I was in a women's choir once upon a time, and there was first, second, and third soprano, and first, second, and third alto. And the third altos had this deep, rich, gorgeous sound, and the first sopranos were what are called brilliant sopranos, and they have this beautiful light sound, and they're super high, and it sounds like their voice has never heard of the concept of gravity.
Hmm.
Right? They could just kind of float up there, and they're happiest there. So it depends on. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that they're happiest there. It takes quite a lot of effort to do both of those things.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so, but that's, it depends on who you're writing the music for. So quite often I'm in a situation where I cannot find a song that is expressing whatever it is that I want to express at the time, possibly in a concert or something. And I just can't find it online. So I write it myself. So my compositions can be solos, they can be choir music, and they could be all different types of choir music. That makes sense. So it kind of depends on the voices I'm composing for, and if I'm composing for a children's choir versus an adult choir, that's a whole nother, because the development of the larynx is different. So you're dealing with a different type of sound. So you have to compose in a different sort of way, understanding those limitations or those abilities.
Such as the amount of breath and volume that you're going to get, and the spacing out of the notes that you can expect from those little tiny pink lungs. Is that
Somewhat, but most kids have fully developed enough lungs to sing a musical phrase or a musical sentence.
okay?
Um, it's more the sound quality that's
And what do you
going to
mean
be
by
different.
like richness, carrying, like how far it goes and how?
Yeah, just the richness of the tone, the saturation of the tone. Um, there's because they're, if you're composing for a children's choir, you're dealing with larynxes that haven't gone through puberty yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like a racer, when they're in fourth grade, are not going to have the endurance and they're not going to have the speed that
Oh,
that
okay.
same child is going to have in 8 years when they're a senior in high school.
Okay.
And a senior in high school is not going to have the same sound quality as someone who's 26
Mm-hmm.
often.
Yeah.
That's not universally the case, as in head for head, every
Mm-hmm.
person everywhere. But that's generally speaking what you're going to have. I sound a lot more like a full grown adult woman now than what I did when I was 17 and taking voice lessons.
And is
Um,
that because of the wear and tear of your voice? I guess it would have to be, or your expertise with your voice, or just natural cartilage saturation. I don't even know what that word means in
all
this
of those
context, but
things,
okay.
all of those things play into it. Um, there's there's just a maturity to it that we can kind of recognize. Your voice ages as you age,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and men's voices tend to stand the test of time a little bit better than women's voices. Um, I've heard different theories about why that is. Some of it's hormonal, some of
I think
it's,
it's the patriarchy.
yes, down with the patriarchy. I want to sing beautifully when I'm 90. Instead of having this thin, reedy voice that's been hollowed out throughout the years.
Is there okay, this might be a sacrilegious question or a dangerous question, but is there a use for your power of music that you've had to learn to respect, such as like you can manipulate time, space, or human beings?
Oh, you can definitely manipulate human beings
Okay.
with the tone of your voice. Oh, you absolutely can. It's it's actually quite fun if you're doing it intentionally.
Okay.
Um, it sounds like evil scientist, but
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
there's been times where I've been in a group of singers that don't have any sort of, they've never been trained. They kind of don't know what they're doing, but they can read music. They know what they're singing, things of that nature. And you can kind of play, or I can kind of play with my voice and add resonance and things of that nature. And kind of, they just kind of follow you. And
Oh.
suddenly, in
Whoa.
like 45 seconds, you can kind of orally massage people into a better sound. And then
Yeah.
suddenly it's like, this is better than the sum of it, what it was 45 seconds ago.
Okay. Yeah.
You can absolutely do that.
Like a
Um,
like a flock in flight, you can take it over in a way by kind of changing the air in a way. But and you're also allowing them to hear, and then hearing they kind of naturally want to go there. You're kind of drawing them into a space that they hadn't known was possible in a way.
right. Like they maybe not know consciously how to get there,
Yeah.
but it's a form of mimicry, I guess you can say, but a
Hmm.
mimicry towards the good. where you see something or you hear something and you're just like, oh, okay. And the thing is about vocal cords that a lot of people don't quite realize is that you don't actually have any physical control over them whatsoever.
Oh, do
You
tell.
can't move them of your
Oh,
own accord. They just do it on their own. And
okay.
you learn how to do that as a baby,
Okay.
right? So a
Okay.
baby comes into this world and knows how to cry. That's about it,
Yeah.
right? And then they start, I mean, I'm sure you know stages of development. They start babbling and then they kind of go through a screaming phase where they are starting to move their sound up and down, things of that nature. So by the time that you come into fully understanding your voice, I guess you could say, a lot of the foundation has already been laid. You
And
know
it's
what I
been
mean?
laid
It's
through play, experimentation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like often people don't remember learning their alphabet.
I remember trying to do cursive at some point, but I've completely like discarded cursive from my life. So every once in a while, I'll do a H and an E. I'll link them when I'm doing the word the. But yeah,
Yeah. So a lot of that is just kind of there. And how you learn to manipulate them is via experimentation
yeah,
through play.
yeah,
And then voice lessons is changing a lot of things that you do with
yeah.
your body in order to get the sound that you want.
Oh, so it's tertiary or secondary to the actual vocal cord. You're dealing with your stomach. You're dealing with your shoulders. You're dealing with the angle of your neckline. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a physical thing. So you have to stand in a certain way. Now,
Yeah.
again, this is not locked in, but we kind of know that, like if you've ever seen an opera singer sing, you'll see them kind of stand in a certain way, right? You don't want your feet too close together. You want to stand in a sort of powerful way. The biggest thing that you will hear any voice teacher tell you, any beginner voice teacher, is is breathing. Your breathing technique is almost, it is kind of the name of the game,
Yeah.
right? So every new song, especially if it's particularly difficult, right, where there's a lot of um, vocal gymnastics and things of that nature, learning when, how, and how long to breathe during these passages,
Yeah.
you have to do that on every single song.
Yeah. Okay. So you pre-map it kind of. I don't know if I'm trying to. My brain leapt for some reason to like a record that's been grooved out. You actually have to go through and kind of groove out the rhythm of the entire song on a pre musical level, on just a physiological level, the peaks and the rises and the troughs and the and duration and then also force, and then you add up there and then you start to deal with the
All
actual
of
song.
that.
Okay.
It actually goes into there. And then once you've nailed the physicality of it, then you bring the artistry aspect of it into it. And you,
Okay.
okay, now what is it that I'm trying to express here? What are the thoughts, the emotions, the communication I'm having with my audience? What is it that I am looking to do here? What does that sound like? And then experimenting with it until you get it where you want it to be. And then there's a lot of science behind that, and and things of that nature. But you can kind of intuit it, right? Like, what is a happy sound? What is a sad sound? What is these are concepts that even children understand. So when I'm talking to a children's choir, which I do often, um, I will ask them about things like Disney songs. You know, what did you feel when this song was going? What about this one? What about this one? Can you give me an adjective that would describe this song? And they're surprisingly really quite good at it. It's a natural human thing, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, would
Mm-hmm.
be, you know what I mean? I think that part of it is kind of somewhat intuitive. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing like higher level music, like singing an aria by Handel or something,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, there might be an added layer of difficulty there because you're singing within a certain genre, you know, with certain expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like Disney music writers are incredibly good at what they do,
Mm-hmm.
basically, and it's fairly obvious what they're going for because they're writing for children, and then you can kind of take that and plug that into other things and say, can we make that sound
Hmm.
that you're familiar with over here, and can we put it here?
Okay.
Now, what if we change it in this one way? Would that add a layer of complexity? Well, yes. You know what I mean? And you can kind of explain that to them and they get it incredibly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and adult choirs do too. You could talk at a higher level with them,
Okay.
um,
Yeah. But you were
depending on
also
what.
saying that you could bypass talking because there are some things that it's better to actually just manipulate them emotionally, specifically adults, maybe just even human beings in general, specifically within the domain of attempting to create a sound by presenting the sound to them and presenting the sound to them and presenting the sound to them. Like you were saying, like after half an hour or an hour, people start to say, okay, this is what we're doing. It's like trying to teach people what water is by, just running water over their hand, like what happened with Helen Keller. If that story is not
Right.
apocryphal, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then another thing that you could kind of think of is that it's not always entirely manipulative. Um,
I
have
know.
you
I
ever
use that
met
word.
someone? I
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I kind of want to, it would
Yeah.
be
Please expand
interesting
on
to
that.
hear
Yeah.
people's thoughts on it. Have you ever met someone whose voice just makes you want to like roll around like a cat in catnip?
Oh, okay.
Like their
I thought you
voice
were going to
is,
go in the other direction, like scratch out my ears and yeah,
well, there's that too.
yeah,
There's that too. But if you were going to tune your mind towards the good, right?
yeah.
Have you ever heard someone, and we all do this. We all
Mm.
have vocal manipulations that
Mm-hmm.
we do that express certain things, right? When you are warmly welcoming someone,
Mm-hmm.
what if you haven't seen someone in forever? You know what that sounds like, right? You can hear it inside of your head,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? What if somebody gives you a gift, right? And then it doesn't happen, right? So then that we all experience that, and that is a sort of emotional manipulation,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
where you have an interplay there. But if you wanted someone to feel welcome, like come into my home,
Mm-hmm.
right? Come on in. You know, mi casa es su casa. You come on in. You know what I mean? It's you used a certain tone of voice in order to communicate that. You wouldn't talk like a robot, or we all know like a fine, you can come in if you want to. You
Yeah,
know, it's a
yeah.
different tone of voice. So you are indicating a certain thing through the tone of your voice. You can do the same thing in music.
Yeah, 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 of course. And a lot of that, as is, everybody's experienced the loss of meaning when communication is distilled into the Facebook post or the Twitter post.
Yes.
And even when, even in conversation, which I kind of do enough to know that I'm doing something, but I haven't really analyzed what I'm doing on a very fine level, like deconstructing the Benjamin Boyce intonation. But when I am expressing humor, I tend toward the dry humor, so I don't indicate it with my inflection. So there's a gap in the meaning, which I find funny when I'm, being sarcastic, and I just say something that I get in trouble sometimes because people don't know I'm joking when I am joking because I don't inflect, which I find funny. So even the lack of inflection is another, I guess, a kind of a geeky form of
Absolutely.
meaning or something like that. Yeah.
Yep. That's just kind of, and as you get to know someone, you
Yeah.
get to know that
Yeah.
part of them. There is that part of things,
Is
you know.
there a funny song, or are there? Well, I mean, that's stupid. But what are some really funny? Do you ever like find funny songs, or like just on a pure musical level? Because I can create funny lyrics, but I just wonder what a funny song would be, or like a song that just makes people laugh, just on a purely on a musical level. Because I understand there could be joyful songs, but like a funny song.
Oh yeah, sure. So I teach. One of the things that I do is I teach elementary music, and you really can't do super high level songs with them, right? They don't understand it. It's kind of like teaching them Shakespeare. Like they could probably understand what you're saying, but they're like, okay, I'm going to repeat those words back to you, but I have no idea what that's talking about, right? They don't really get it, right? So a lot of what I do is teach funny songs. And so uh, there's, I could, I don't even know
Yeah.
if I could give you, I don't know if they're on the internet or not,
Well, can't you
because I
just
use
hum
books
hum
that
a
are
few
like out.
bars? It shouldn't flag my show for copyright violation if you just belt one out.
um, so one of them is the Super Supper March. It's about food
Super
and about being
super mark.
super hungry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so, but it starts with hungry, hungry, I am hungry. Table, table, here I come. I could eat a goose moose burger, 15 pickles and a purple plum. Anyway, it goes on
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it some of them are real foods, some of them are not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it kind of ends with table, 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 here I come. Yum! And then they all shout yum. So it's
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
funny song, and it kind of allows them to kind of express like what does it sound like you are so hungry. And if there
Yeah.
is something that little kids understand, it's I am so hungry. um so
Yeah.
yeah, so there's that aspect of things. So you teach them silly funny songs. There's a song called The Clam where a guy goes out and finds a clam and invites him to come to his house,
Oh.
names him Jack, and
Okay.
and invites him into his house possibly for a midnight snack,
Yeah.
and then he puts them in a pot, but instead of the clam steaming until it's food, it grows. And
Oh.
then suddenly this clam is 9 foot tall, and he's putting, it was like, and come over to my house. I have some lovely Tabasco sauce I'd like to put on your back. And then, and then the clam grows to 9 feet tall, and suddenly this clam is putting Tabasco sauce on my back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what he's gonna do. And the song ends there. The kids think it's hilarious because we all know that the clam is going to eat you, but we don't actually
Yeah.
get
We
to
we
that
don't
point.
we don't get into the vor.
Yeah.
So
So there's a lot of songs of that nature that are kids songs, but I mean, you can do that as adults too.
That's
One
still that's
I
still that's still on the level of the lyric though. That's not like a funny tune. Like just a so I guess there could be something like a silly tune, like doom 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 doom
Yeah.
doom 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 doom, or something like that. Where you kind of feel
Yeah.
the bouncy, the movement. I don't know. I just that's a whole thought experiment to try to figure out how to be funny, just purely with the maybe it would be stopping or switching or like going really hard and then really soft, like so kind of a sense of jumping from one thing to the next or some sort of clashing gaudy motley thing.
Right. And there's carnival music. Carnival music is funny quite often, or it's at least fun.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways of doing it, depending on,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
then, yeah,
what genre of
transposing that.
music you're in.
So we launched into this long exploration of music, but the original question was, well, one of the original questions was, when you are in a dissonant part of life and you sing the dissonant song, and my question was, are you not amplifying the dissonance? But you started to speak about this thing called the tonic. So what is it about giving expression to the darkness that doesn't reify or, well, I'm sure that you can do that or you cannot do that and still express darkness, like put it in its place or something like that.
Right. Well, you can give it a silver lining. You can plug it into
Hmm.
something that's greater,
Mm-hmm.
and point it in the direction of the tonic, right? Because the dissonance is not the tonic. You don't want to stay there.
Okay.
Sometimes you need to express
Oh,
that
okay.
because it's a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's part of the journey. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? But you can kind of always be pushing it back towards the thing that you want, right? So um, you got to be careful not to express only the dissonance, right? Because that's nobody's going to listen to that, right? If
Mm-hmm.
it was a piece of music, it would be the
Mm-hmm.
song that never ends, but it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
the worst song ever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It
Right. So
never
you got
ends.
to
Yeah.
add moments of beauty into it, and you can kind of move it
Mm-hmm.
towards that,
Mm-hmm.
or in that general direction. And that's how I kind of think of those things, right? So you can there's a benefit in expressing the dissonance, right? Because just pure beauty all the time is really boring, like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of a musical anything,
Yeah.
right? Because you never get any tension that needs to be resolved. It's just
Yeah.
so and
Or
it's
it's
like
exhausting. Even if it's not boring, it's exhausting in a way, which is another form of saying it's boring. Yeah.
right. Um, or if you were going to put it in terms of life, right? So if your life is entirely happiness all the time, that, I mean, we all know that human beings get bored with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Was that famous line? I can't remember who said it. Like if you put human beings in a utopia, like an actual utopia, the very first thing they do is destroy it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because it'd get boring, right?
Yeah.
They're like,
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Look at Portland, Oregon. I mean, that was as close to a utopia as America got, and now where is it?
yeah, it starts to devolve. So another thing you could kind of look at it like is if if you've ever experienced children, that everything is perfect, but they get bored with perfect. They have all the food and all the distraction they could want.
Mm-hmm.
And what's better than boredom is fighting.
Mm-hmm. Or
They'll just pick
struggle
on
on
each other.
some level. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it could be over something like he's looking at me,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
he's sitting too close to me,
Or he's not looking at
or
me. Yeah. Yeah.
he said something in a mean way.
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
we're fighting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where in life you're just going to have those moments of dissonance and darkness, and you're going to, but you can direction it towards the good, I guess you
Okay.
could say. And music is the medium in which I do that,
Okay.
I guess.
So that all said, and feel free to not answer this question. When you were in the depths of despair and even music forsook you, so by which I gather that even the ability to put anything into context was gone, how did you manage to go through that? Or at what point, like, what did you learn going through that? how did you go through that? And then what was on the other side for you of that?
Oh boy. Well, I can honestly say that music is actually what saved me.
Okay.
When I was in the depths of it, I had an old friend that I had not seen in years call me and ask me to be part of a musical group.
Oh, just randomly.
In the middle, randomly, I have no idea why she even thought of me. And so it gave me something. It was a touchstone in life that allowed me to kind of pull through.
Okay.
Um, what it, I don't remember the other questions.
Oh,
What did it teach me or something?
yeah, something like that. Or did you have to, when you came out the other side, were you missing something and added to? Like, were you subtracted and added to? Or,
Well, anytime you go through that, you come out with a greater understanding of of other people, of what they're going through.
okay.
Like when you just kind of go through life and like everything's kind of fine. Like you have your
Yeah.
moments of sadness and you have your moments of great joy, and but everything's kind of within the normal realm of the fluctuation of life, right? Suddenly you're in the basement and you're like, oh my goodness, I managed to get out of the basement somehow, but there's a lot of other people that are just wandering around and they're there. Like you don't know that they're there. It made me much kinder.
Oh, were
Um,
you don't strike me as a mean girl, but maybe you weren't
I wasn't. I
as
was
nice.
never mean, but I would
Yeah.
say that I didn't understand in the same level that I do now
Okay.
what despair can actually do to you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That it and what it's difficult when you go, well, how could that possibly be that difficult? And then you go, oh, that's how. Okay,
Okay.
I get it now. It helps you to have more grace with people and to be mindful that you just don't know what everybody's journey
Yeah.
is. You know, I kind of wish that that we still had some sort of um, societal signaling for like deep grief.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like people used to wear all black
Okay.
for
Yeah.
a time when they were in deep grief. And it was a signal like, hey, like this person is is probably somewhat broken. Treat them
Mm.
kindly.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect the same thing from them that you might in other circumstances. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of wish that we still had something like that, but
Well, the internet
that's
kind of,
gone to the wayside.
well, I think the internet has kind of made that more difficult because people can use that to gain or game society. So it's really difficult beyond immediate time, immediate and, well, immediate as in vicinity and duration, so extended understanding of a person to, you know, honor very deep things without it being, either becomes an oppression Olympic on one level, or with teenagers on Tumblr becomes a co-rumination where they start to absorb everybody else's distress and then express it through
Right.
improper means. But, and again, sorry if this is too personal. I'm just curious. The fact of a tremendous despair being appended to such a miraculous, powerful event of producing a human being, is that how does that, I know there's science and stuff, but how does that work where how does that work where this really positive and this negative are bound together? And is that like, does that amplify the distress because there's all this dissonance within just the pairing of producing a human being and then being cast into an emotional free fall at the same time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The the guilt about being anything less than ecstatically joyful
Oh, wow. Yeah.
is is quite something. And yet, um, it's kind of like being in love at a fundamental level that it's very difficult to even express, but they're also torturing you.
What?
So I had a baby that had colic and didn't sleep for more than 15, 20 minutes, 45 minutes at a time, at any given time around the clock for about 6 months.
Okay.
So I never slept for longer than 15 to 45 minutes at any given time for 6 months. I was not a fully functioning human being by the end of it.
Yeah. Talk about not well regulated, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, but you would do anything for this child, anything,
Hmm.
even not sleep for 6 months, even though
Yeah.
you feel like you're dying.
Yeah. Okay.
That actually is what it kind of feels like. They're crying for hours and hours on end, and it. If you
Talk
if
about
you
Stockholm
have,
syndrome.
it's actually a lot like that. I remember during that time um, I was reading about the torture techniques that they put people through at Guantanamo Bay.
Oh yeah.
And the sound of baby crying was one of the things.
Yeah.
And standing up and drinking lots of water, but not being able to go to the bathroom and things of that nature. Those are all torture techniques. They're also what I was going through
Oh
because you're like,
man.
I have to drink a lot of water in order to feed this baby because you're
Yeah.
nursing. But the baby finally fell asleep, and I can't go to the bathroom because if I move, this baby's going to wake up. And I'm like, I just want to sit here and fall asleep, but I have to go to the bathroom, but I can't.
Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
it was a lot of that sort of thing. But on the other end of it, you begin to realize just how strong mothers are that have gone through that. Like I came out of it and I'm like, you know what? She's fine. I'm fine. We love each other. Everything's great.
Wow.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's, you begin to it in some sense it was like a bonding thing because she wasn't any happier than what I was at that point.
Hmm.
Because colic is highly unpleasant for them.
Do is it known why or what it is?
At the time, there was nothing. From what I understand now, some babies that have colic are helped with probiotics because their gut bacteria are not fully developed and it
Oh, okay.
causes enormous amounts of pain.
Okay.
By the time that information came out, was done with
Yeah.
having babies.
So, I mean, you don't even have reason to cling to at this point, and by which I mean causation. You just have the effect that you're just steeped in.
Right. It
Yeah.
just is that. And you go talk to the doctor and they're like, yeah, you have colic.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do. Now that there's reflux medication and things of that nature, I have no idea. I've done the research on this, and
Hmm.
the chance of getting a baby that was like one particular baby in particular, that didn't sleep for 6 months is so infinitesimal. It's
Okay.
like 99.9% of kids do not experience this. So it's rare, but we got through it.
And so back to your musical sensibility or your musical imagination, your musical capacity. I'm wondering, under that circumstance, where did it leave you? Was it from exhaustion? Was it from constant interruption? Was that where it left you? Is that where, and then you were invited at some point to participate again in music, but it sounds like you were completely broken down by that. I just wonder at what point did music was gone. that was the same
I'm
thing that we were
sorry.
talking
Say
about.
that one more time.
Well, you were talking about
When
when
did
you,
music come back?
well,
Is that what you're?
I was just wondering, because I just want to, just if you were stress tested as a music machine and you were given this anti-music device, this colicky cacophony that constantly interrupted. At what point did the music machine break, or at what point were you, like, what functioning was it that you were separated from music? If that was when you said in the depths of despair you were forsaken by that musical capacity.
Um, I think that there was just like at what point did it leave? I don't know. I
Okay.
just know that at one point I realized it was gone.
Oh, okay.
Because when you have a baby, like you don't think about anything other
Okay.
than baby. Like this is especially when you're a mom and those postpartum hormones are coming into play, like
Okay.
this is now your life.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
it's the reason why like the idea of going back to work when you have a 2-week-old infant is just inconceivable. Like you
Yeah.
like because a baby does not know that it is a different person than you when it's first born.
And there's some level of you that doesn't know that either, or has forsaken that
Exactly. Right. And
individualism.
your
Yeah.
body kind of doing its thing, right?
Yeah.
So it just wasn't there one day. I didn't notice it. It was kind of like silence. It's hard to notice silence unless,
Yeah.
you know, what if you had a TV going in the background, right? And it was quiet. It's down on level 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And suddenly you have a whole group of 2-year-olds,
Yeah.
something that sounds like you're pretty familiar with. They're all jabbering and talking and whatnot. And then somebody shuts the TV off. You might not notice it,
Yeah. Okay.
right? And then as time went on, you're like, okay, this it got turned back on.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was an intentional thing. Like I turned it back on,
Oh, okay.
right? And then I was like, no, there has to be space for this. There has to be. It is intrinsic to me. I am broken without it. I'm not the same person without it. And so even now, I honor that space to have that be there, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the people around me honor that too.
They take it as a part of you too.
Yeah, it's I'm not joking when I say like I am known in my community as the music lady. Like like they'll ask me to, it's not uncommon around Christmas or Thanksgiving or because I'm in a Christian community, to like, hey, sing us a song, and so I do. It's just kind of a normal part of me. So they accept that I need that space to create this thing and things of that nature. This person needs that creative outlet, and then they get to benefit from it on the other end of it.
I was just speaking with a Jungian, psychoanalytic psychologist, whatever, a Jungian
They would probably have a
therapist.
heyday with me.
Well,
They
Lisa
probably have a heyday with
Marciano.
everybody.
Well, yeah, they do. It's Lisa Marciano. I highly recommend that you just get anybody follow her on Twitter. But she just wrote a book earlier this year, was published, called Motherhood, and she goes through all these different aspects of motherhood, the good and the bad and the ugly and the really really ugly. And she uses fairy tales to explain, in a Jungian way, these patterns of the psyche that are being revealed through these different experiences that have to do with motherhood and, mother-daughter relationships and all these different aspects of that. And I was just thinking now, one thing that does come up, and I interviewed her, and one thing that came up was this guilt that is endemic to motherhood. There's just this guilt, and I my mom expresses that, like even like, I'm sorry, 35 years ago, that one thing happened, I'm so guilty. I wasn't perfect, and that, but just that's such an interesting, I just wonder why guilt, what is guilt serving? How is guilt connected to preserving the bond between a mother and her child, and just a bunch of questions around guilt, but also how do you deal with guilt? How do you put it in its place? How do you honor it? And da 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 da. But just you expressed or you spoke about guilt, and in the context of music, how does music? Is there guilt? Is there like guilty songs? Is there like a whole like kind of volume of guilt music, but in the context also of therapy, and then the context specifically, and this is one thing that I find parallel between what we were talking about here with music and what Lisa is talking about with regards to therapy, is that there's this integration that happens where we kind of start to put ourselves into a greater context. We put our bad moods or our misdeeds into a greater context, and then we figure out how to reach some sort of stability through time by connecting ourselves to a higher order level. This is a really long way of trying to ask you to compose like a symphony of woman, with all the different things that go on, particular, and with the intensity of that. And if that is somehow what you naturally are working on, if you ever think in terms of the symphony or the epic, just
I've never
constellating
really,
all these different things.
never really thought of it that way in particular.
Hmm.
Um,
Where the therapy, I guess there's a
one of
question
the
around the
things
therapeutic. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, one of the things that mothers do, or what mothers are supposed to do, is we are supposed to amplify or help the child build who they're supposed to be and not hurt them. Kind of like cultivation, right? So a child is a certain being, and it's going to produce, if I were to use a plant metaphor, you know, it's
The
this
human
lovely
being.
tomato plant,
Yeah.
right? Beautiful tomato plant. And you're supposed to make sure it's weeded, around it so it can't be choked out. You're supposed to make sure it gets what it needs in terms of nutrition and water and sunlight and this, that, and the other thing. And then if everything turns out well, it produces these wonderful things. Right now, if you do that with children, if you put it in the context of children, it's 18 years roughly of, okay, well, how do I help this child become the best human being that I can possibly do? And then when you screw up, you go, oh shoot, did I just wreck
Ruin.
this for life? Right? Like, how much therapy am I going to have to do? You know what I mean? How much money do I got to put in the therapy fund in order to, um, in order to fix the problem? Just like if you have a garden and you never weed it, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take a lot longer to, you know what I mean? Or if you
Yeah.
have a tree and it gets bent, how much effort are you going to have to? And what if you're the one that bent it?
Mm-hmm.
That as a parent is kind of a horrifying idea, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that but yeah, it can be a positive thing if you've actually done something wrong. And then guilt can also be a paralyzing thing. So it kind of depends on kind of the situation and the damage that's done.
Is
You know,
there? I'm. I don't want to go here, but I still want to ask something about the therapeutic, or the healing, maybe rather than the therapeutic nature of music. And have you seen that work in you? Have you seen that work on other people or for other people? And have you been able to participate in like a healing music for people that you've seen?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have. There's actually whole professions around this. I don't know if you know this or not, but there are actually like musical therapists. Um,
Hmm.
and quite often they'll go into hospitals and even sing and play for brand new babies to bring them calmness and
Hmm.
things of that nature. If you ever meet one of those people, they're the salt of the earth.
Okay, so you
Try to
approve
be
of
their
them?
friend.
Okay.
I do. I do. But then there's also, when somebody is experiencing a death of a loved one, and I actually do regularly do this, I will ask if there's a particular song in um, that they loved or something that brings them peace or something like that. And I'll make a recording for them
Hmm.
that I think that they would like, that they can listen to. And quite often that gives peace
Hmm.
um, and healing at times to kind of, because music is generally speaking beautiful, and yet we all know beautiful pieces that express mourning, right? Mourning and grief. So you could make that beautiful for them and help them see that. Um, there's also lots of musical therapy for people with special needs and things of that nature to kind of, I'm sure you're familiar with that if you work with children. I'm sure you've seen it or heard it. Um, it
It
can be
also,
really helpful for.
with regards to what we were talking about, teaching children emotion, certain forms of autism are music is helpful for expressing things that in a verbal way become too disconnected from emotion or operate on another level, and then make it really difficult for the individual to
Right.
parse social data because they don't have connection to what music gives them connection to.
Yeah, and it's a form of um, naming, you know, a force of
Oh,
expressing something that may not easily be expressed another way. Um, so, if you have someone with a low verbal IQ, you know, you can ask them how they're feeling or what kind of music they'd like to hear, or you know what I mean? And I think that a lot of people, and again, maybe my life is a little bit different than the average person, but like I am entering the teenage years with my kids. And there are times in which the music that they listen to gives you a really good indication exactly where they're at.
yeah.
Like, mom put something on that's fun, or you hear things coming out of the room and you're like, oh, okay, so we're going to give them a little space, let them process that. And then other people do that in terms of journaling or any number of things. But music can be very therapeutic because it gives an expression to something
Hmm.
that maybe you can't even name because maybe it's too complex.
That leads
Right.
me to another question that I think it builds on, with regards to spirituality and the role of music in perhaps teaching you about God or something that isn't joy, anger, something that isn't necessarily tied down to the normal things. Or does it teach you? Does it allow you to feel closer? How has it been incorporated into your spiritual development, if you don't mind speaking to that?
Um, well, there's different types of music within the religious sphere,
Yeah, there are.
um, that give expression to different things. And again, everybody kind of classifies it differently. And I haven't, we all know what cathedral music sounds like,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe you don't. I don't know. Um,
Gregorian or
there's
something else.
Gregorian.
Yeah.
There's the Orthodox Church has some really, really beautiful music.
Hmm.
I've shared a piece on Twitter before. I can't remember what the name of it is right off the top of my head, although I don't aspire to the theology of the Orthodox Church.
Mm-hmm.
The music itself, even if you don't understand the words, which most people don't because they're not Russian or they're not, they don't speak Latin, which like Gregorian chants and things of that nature would be. We kind of understand what they're kind of going for in terms of the awe and the reverence
Okay.
and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
with my religious tradition, it's the thing I missed most during COVID was singing with other Christians. The concept of singing with, to use a Christian word, the congregation, right? To sing with other people
Hmm.
and lift the voices, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, you name it. It's a mix. It is all of humanity, every
Hmm.
type of human being always kind of pointed in the same direction. And
Okay.
that to me was the thing I missed the most. And it's the thing that brought me the most joy
Mm-hmm.
when it came back, I
Okay.
guess, more than anything else.
So on a theological level, there's a similarity in how you think of how you've described music, and then you described the use of music within a spiritual or religious context. Is that there's always a direction. There's always some sort of direction. So the direction I suppose of worship is toward God. So maybe you don't even have to define God or know what God is other than a direction that we kind of define spatially as up or, lifted. Is that
Right. I think that human beings have an innate sense of the transcendent. I think that's kind of what you're pointing at right
Mhm.
now. Maybe not everybody, head for head, universally, all of you.
Yeah.
But I think most people have an understanding of the something higher, whether that is, I mean, even the concept of respect is,
Okay.
which I think we
Okay.
all have an understanding, um,
Okay.
is pointing in that same direction.
Okay.
Being that I am a Christian, it's, I'm pointed at a deity,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But that might not be the same thing that everybody else is pointed at.
Yeah. Well, I asked that because I want to get to a point in my work in these conversations of beginning to have conversations about that. But the problems with the conversations about the deity or the spiritual life is that it devolves into belief, which I don't have a problem with belief itself, but belief is a lower order of experience because it's languaged and it's cataloged, and through that you get wisdom and you get tradition and you get community. So there's a lot of benefit of that, but it's not the same thing as having a relationship with the transcendent. And through music, it seems like there is the possibility of not just lifting the voice, of rendering yourself in a relationship like a prompt upward, but there's also the possibility of this communication. There's also the possibility of something coming back, of being answered, of being heard in the feelings that precede that connect with consciousness rather than with our thought process and all the organs of belief, and then that which connects us with our fellow
Right.
men and with reality.
Yeah. There's, I have to go in like 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
so I'm gonna have to make this short and sweet. Um, I know what you're talking about. There is if you've ever been in a long-term relationship with someone, right? Like where you have a deep amount of intimacy and knowledge of someone, and you would say, well, describe this person. You could do so. Like he's 5'9", has beard, blue eyes, wears glasses. I have no idea. Like I'm just describing a random person.
Okay.
So, um, but that to describe your relationship with this person, you could try to verbalize the things that you love about him or the things that you do for each other. But that doesn't actually describe the relationship. There's something unspeakable about that. Does that make sense? And this is why we have love songs. Because it expresses something that cannot be expressed another way. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And we can have that same sort of thing with the transcendent or with God, right? How do you describe that relationship? Well, you can describe it, you could use words, but there's a certain element that is outside of the definition of what you can really communicate to another person.
But just like in that choir where you can lift the voices a little bit more, you can resonate with that, and other people start to get a sense of, oh, that's what you're talking about. Oh, that's what you see.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. And you can make it. Another thing that I really love about singing with groups is that the resonance of it is you can make it greater than itself. There is a wonderful podcast by Chris Muntz, I believe is what his name is. You may have seen him on Twitter, but he interviews someone who talks about formants and overtones and things of that nature. It gets really nerdy, which I love. I love all of it. And they can kind of explain some of what it is that you're actually hearing on a scientific level, but we all know it's happening. Right? We all know when something is alive and greater than itself. And that is kind of what choir teachers and singers kind of are aiming for. But yeah, anyway. But yes, you could definitely use that in the service of the transcendent and to explain your relationship with it. Like, because if you would really ask me, right? So this is a personal thing. It's not the same way everybody else does it. But if you were to ask me to explain my relationship with my God or with my spouse or with my child or with whatever, I could explain it to you, but I could send you a song. And I think you would understand it better. Now, other people might use painting or some other level of expression, poetry, stories, pictures, But yeah, everybody has kind of their own way of doing it, I guess, to express that which is not expressible outside of that. And it's highly personal.
Well, thank you for getting personal, highly or lowly, with me. Thank you so much, and I'll let you go. But maybe you could send me a song that's not copyrighted that I could put at the end, if that's possible.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
I don't know if I'll have time.
Okay.
Because I've got a busy. I don't know when you're going to publish this, but I have a busy next 5 days.
Oh,
so
5 days?
Really
that's such a short time. And then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and so on and so forth.
I'll see what I can do.
All right.
Why don't you send me a text or something
Yeah,
along those lines and tell me
yeah.
kind of what you want to hear and see if
Oh,
I can
okay.
make it happen.
Oh, wow. Okay. Like, okay, you're open to requests. I would just wanted something random, but okay. We'll talk offline, or we'll talk
I
online.
have, I have, it's kind of like, say, just like going to a museum and be like, just show me a picture of one of the things that you have. You go, there's too many. How am I supposed to choose?
That's a
Can you just like point me in the direction you want something from the industrial age? Do you want like dolls? Like, what is it that you want to hear? So,
that's a very privileged place to be in life.
I take requests fairly often. So,
Excellent.
because I don't believe that music is entirely just in service of myself.
Or limited by much of anything.
It's a very ancient saying, but a true and honest thought, that if you become a teacher, by your pupils you'll be taught. As a teacher I've been learning, you'll forgive me if I boast, but I've now become an expert on the subject I like most. Getting to know you. Getting to know you. Getting to know all about you. Getting to like you. Getting to hope you're like me. Getting to know you. Putting it my way, but nicely. You are precisely my cup of tea. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I am with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed? Suddenly I'm bright and breezy because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you. Getting to like you, getting to hope you're like me. Getting to know you, putting it my way, but nicely. You are precisely my cup of tea. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I am with you, getting to know